Hello, my freeze artists. Welcome to art class. This week we are going to look at something called one-point perspective. Okay, this is a artwork, or it's a technique to help show depth in a picture. Okay, sometimes we get too used to drawing everything all straight across your paper and everything's the same size. Using one-point perspective helps us to show things that are far from you or close to you. When things are farther from you, they seem smaller, right? You guys can sit there and pinch your head, my head, on your screen right now. But if I was up close, it might be a little bigger. I got a big head, you wouldn't be able to do that. So when we're doing this, I want you to really think about things that are close to you are going to be bigger, things farther away, smaller, okay? Just because my hand is this size, and if I bring it closer, it looks bigger now, right? It looks dirty too, isn't it? Big, smaller. My hand didn't magically change sizes, but we have to figure out in art how to draw things sometimes to make it look like it changes sizes. Okay, it's kind of like an illusion. It's to trick our brain a little bit, and one-point perspective really helps us create that depth in our artwork. I'm gonna give you guys a couple different options when you're doing this. I'm gonna draw a spooky landscape, more of a spooky scene, kind of getting geared up for Halloween. If you're not really into Halloween, or you would try to do, or you would prefer to do a more traditional fall landscape, feel free to do that, okay? The whole idea, the whole objective behind this is just to get comfortable with drawing perspective, one-point perspective. All right, so just bear with me. Remember, if I go too fast, you can always pause the video. This is a little more of a challenging drawing, so don't worry. Pause the video if you have to. Oh, one more thing. This is a 2-week project, so whatever we get done today, I'm gonna need you to keep and hold on to, all right? Don't throw it away, because I'm gonna show you some coloring techniques for it and finish up the drawing next week, okay? So keep this drawing, don't throw it away. We'll get the drawing part hopefully close to done today, and then when we come the following week, next week, we'll add some color or paint to it, whatever you got. All right, you guys? All right, let's go. All right, you guys, for this project, we're gonna need our paper, our ruler, pencil, eraser, and like I said, if you don't have a ruler, you can always go ahead and fold up a piece of paper and use that straight edge, or any straight edge you have laying around the house that you're allowed to use for it, okay? So let's get this thing going. The first thing we are going to add to our one-point perspective drawing is our horizon line. So a lot of you guys know what that is. We've talked about it before. If you need a little review, the horizon line is where your sky and your ground, where they meet, okay? I'm gonna have my horizon line a little bit higher because I'm gonna wanna see more of my ground in this picture. I know when you're little, you probably did a line at the top of your paper for your sky and a line at the bottom of your paper for the ground. And then you had all this imaginary stuff in the middle. That doesn't exist, that imaginary stuff. That's why it's imaginary. You have your sky, you have your ground, and you don't really have anything in between. You have the stuff sitting on the ground or stuff up in the sky. So one or the other. Okay, so the most important part of this is our vanishing point. This is where all our diagonal lines converge to, okay? So I want you to think of railroad tracks or a road. Pretend you're standing on a road and you're looking way off into the distance. That road gets smaller and smaller the further it goes, okay? It looks like it almost comes together, just like railroad tracks. And where they converge, where those lines converge, is something called the vanishing point. Okay, that's where the lines vanish off into the distance. We're gonna use that for the road leading up to our spooky house that we're going to draw. When you use your ruler, make sure it's on to the vanishing point all the time. If you're doing that diagonal line with one-point perspective, it always has to go to that vanishing point, okay? And I want my road that I'm going to do right now to go right off of my paper, so up nice and close. So all the way down, and then I'm going to go this way. Make your hands nice and strong when you're using the ruler. You don't want a wobbly line. All the way down. So I want you to think that we're standing right here, and then way off into the distance is where the road kind of comes together, okay? So we're gonna draw a kind of spooky little house up on the top of a horizon line here. Now it's okay that I'm drawing it on the horizon line, it's just kind of far away. When I'm drawing a spooky house, you can draw your house however you want to. A lot of these, you can look some up, or you might have your own idea what one looks like. I'm just kind of drawing kind of a cartoony one. They kind of have these weird triangle-y roofs on them, these scary haunted houses. If you don't want to do a haunted house, you can just do a normal house if you want. It's totally up to you. I feel like all those windows are always kind of wonky a little bit. They're not quite perfect by any means. Sure, why not? A little balcony. I can go back and play with that a little bit later, okay? So I have my road, it's leading up to my haunted house. The next thing I want to do to make this spooky is I want to do a set of trees on both sides of the road. So it's like you're walking down this long path and you're kind of surrounded by some spooky things. I'm going to put my ruler on my vanishing point and I'm going to do a line. This is just going to be a guideline. This is how tall all of my trees are going to be. I want all of my trees to be the same size. But when they get farther away, guess what? They're going to look a little bit smaller, aren't they? So right now my hand kind of looks normal, but when I put it up here, right, it looks a lot bigger, doesn't it? My hand didn't change sizes just from going from here to here. It's just because it's closer. So I have to draw things that are closer to me bigger. But I want my trees the same size, so I gotta figure out how I do that. So like I said, I'm gonna do a little guideline. Now I'm really lightly, I'm just gonna do a line that goes from my vanishing point off the side of my paper. And I'm gonna do that on both sides the same. This is to help me, like I said, to show how big my trees are going to be. I'm gonna start closest to us first. These are gonna be my big trees. And I'm just gonna do a spooky tree that goes straight up to my vanishing point line. Or excuse me, to my guideline, I'm sorry. And I'm just gonna have it going up, kind of some old, spooky, wiggly lines. A couple coming off. And I'm gonna do the same thing on this side. So I'm gonna start it at the bottom. It's gonna go up. The thing about this is we don't wanna go above this guideline, okay? That guideline is there to help us to know not to go above that line, okay? And I wanna make sure my trees are standing up tall. So the next tree that I'm going to do is going to be starting it on the side of the road, and again, it's going to be going up to that line, not past it, just to it. So I might have to do a little bit of overlapping here. Okay, can add extra branches off to the side. Now, is it smaller? Sure, I definitely drew it smaller because that's where the guideline and the road told me to, but since I'm using 1 point perspective, I know that it is the same size. We're kind of doing an illusion. We're tricking our eye a little bit to think that we're going off into the distance. So I'm gonna continue these all the way up to my house, okay? Don't forget to overlap them if you have to. One tricky thing I've noticed is sometimes people end up drawing their trees like this, and it looks like they're kind of falling over a little bit. We want to still, just because we're getting closer and that area is getting smaller to draw them in, we don't want to draw them sideways. We still want to draw them nice and tall. That's kind of the #1 tricky thing I find, that when I'm doing this with kids in class, that they have their trees go sideways. All right, so I got my trees all the way up to my road, or my house, I'm sorry. And now I'm just gonna go back, since we did it nice and lightly, it's real easy to erase my guideline. So this house is real big. It's off into the distance, but since you can see my trees are this small, they're real. That means that makes this house real big, but that's okay. I kind of wanted it that way. So now kind of the fun part is what you can do is you can start to design things and add things to your ground around you. Now, if you just want a nice fall scene, you can do pumpkins, you can do leaves on the ground, maybe some animals. But the one thing you need to remember though, the further you get away from the road here and the closer you get to the house, the smaller you need to make things. So if I did a pumpkin just sitting on the ground right here and add a little grass around them, okay? It's gonna be real small if I do one off into the distance. So make sure when you draw things closer to the house, they're getting smaller. I'll do a little cemetery over here. See how I'm making them a little bit smaller? Because they're getting farther from me, okay? If you want to add monsters or zombies or anything walking around, be my guest, okay, you guys? Got some spiders hanging down. I'm gonna do a big old moon in the background, maybe some bats flying around. We're a little early for Halloween, but I just kind of want you guys to know you can kind of add what you want to your picture. If you want it more fall-like, well, Halloween is in the fall, but you can totally take away the spooky part of it and just draw a nice scene. I've seen some people do some mountains in the background, some scarecrows or whatever they want. I'm just kind of adding some eerie clouds up there. Now remember, my clouds go right down. This is my horizon line, so this is still my sky, and that's okay to add, okay? One thing we're gonna try to do now is we're gonna make our road a little more interesting. I want this to be a paved road, okay? So I'm gonna do, for like bricks, I'm going to put my ruler back on the vanishing point, and I'm gonna do some lines that go down from my vanishing point to the very bottom, okay? So I'm gonna start it here, and I'm just gonna keep my ruler on the vanishing point. I'm not gonna move it. I wanna keep this the same width at the bottom, where the bricks would be at the very bottom here, and just straight down. It's gonna look like a bunch of stripes to start with, and that's all right. I'll get one more in there. All right, so you can see I got all these, it looks like a racetrack going off into the distance. Now the bricks that are right here, these are gonna be my biggest bricks, okay? I'm just gonna go every other to keep the pattern of the bricks on there. But the closer I get to the house, the closer I need to put my line. So I'm gonna slowly start to not move my ruler as much up my paper, because those bricks are gonna get smaller and smaller. It's getting a little confusing. Smaller and smaller as we go. Now this is a little more advanced, you guys. If you're like, I had a hard time making that road, then don't worry about this part, okay? This is for someone that picked it up pretty easy. I've done some perspective stuff with my older kids already. This might be your very first time doing it, all right? So don't worry if this is a little kind of confusing for you. But you can see my bricks are getting smaller and smaller the closer I get to the house. I'm gonna just start doing this with, the wrong spot. Okay, pay attention, Mr. Hayes. But again, keep them horizontal. We don't want them. And it's sooner or later, you're not even really gonna be able to tell. These are getting so little. All right. And then later you can kind of scuff them up a little bit, make them a little more eerie if you're going for the eerie look, okay? So, like I said at the beginning, this is gonna be a 2-week project. This is a little bit longer. If we can get some of the drawing done today, like the main trees, the road, and the house, that's a good start, okay? next week what we'll do is if you need to finish any of your little things, your drawings, feel free to finish those up, and then I'll kind of show you some different painting and coloring techniques that we can do to finish this up. All right, so have fun either in your spooky landscape or your traditional fall landscape. Whatever you prefer, you can do it, okay? It's your artwork, have fun with it, and remember, don't get too far ahead of us, don't finish up on us. We're gonna do this for 2 weeks, so put this in a very safe spot, put it in your art folder, put it on your desk where you're working. Just keep it somewhere so you have it ready to go for next week when we come to art. All right, guys, have fun creating, and I'll see you